So Chaim K, who's a awesome guy, works for Bankwest, credit card processing company. He went onto LinkedIn the other day and said, "Hey guys, it's not all fun and games. I just lost a client today. Wasn't my fault. He needed a software for his business that does not accept third-party processors, etc." Anyway, great insight I heard from Mike Chapik and David Koenigsberg on their show, great show by the way, that you have to follow the plan for success. Whatever happens is not up to you. So after that happened, I doubled down and put in more calls and emails out to potential clients. Because at the end of the day, I did what I had to do, so the day was a success. We don't control the outcomes, only our actions.
Nice.
So real-time example of, you know what I like about it? Nobody's testing me to make sure that I'm living up to the ideals that we're sharing here, but I'm grateful that at least other people are. So that, to me, that alone is beneficial.
So on that, I had I saw somebody wrote, they had a question on one of the shows we were doing. They said that this whole idea of you're preconditioned based on your experiences and things that happen, that you see the world through your own eyes. You see the world through your experiences. Why is that important? Like, very nice. It sounds great, but practically, how does it matter in the way I live my life? And I don't know how this dawned upon me, but what I realized is that if you go through your life and you have this preconceived notion, right? Because you had a trauma, or just as a side point, people who have like serious trauma, that's how trauma works, right? Sure. Something happens, you make a decision about yourself when that happens. I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm always the victim, whatever it is for you, we make that decision about ourselves, and then we go through the rest of our life looking at things to say, oh look, it happened again, it's true. Right, we reinforce it, and like what we were talking about before, it's almost like there's a flame, and I touched it, I got burned, and the person says, I never want to be burned again, and have that pain. The difference between my expectation, like that's what, like in relationships, people don't let people in because they don't want to get hurt, right? But if you think about it, it's almost like I'm going to leave my hand here, and allow myself to be burned all the time, so that nobody can ever put my hand there and get burned. Right? I mean, that's the example that people give for trauma.
I on a much lower level and not so heavy. I remember a friend telling me once that his sister was new to getting a license and got into a stupid accident. And his father took her out that same, like an hour later, in the other car, made her drive. And because he didn't want her to like get stuck in that zone of being paralyzed by her fear. So I think the lesson from Chaim is great. Somebody actually doing something with this means that we're not entirely wasting our time here. But I think for us, the next lesson is like you're describing now, is not being paralyzed from that fear.
So what's interesting, as I was thinking about it, like, what is the solution to that, right? Like, and I'm thinking, like, what does Chazal say? This is the solution. And Chazal's solution is Dan Kavslos. If you think about it, what Dan Kavslos is really saying is, you think that you're looking at me, right? So let's work out a scenario, right? You're looking at me now, and you're thinking in your head, what am I going to say after he's finished talking? And I'm thinking, is he looking at my nose? My nose is big?
Definitely is.
And I'm thinking, all that emotion that I have with me, oh, that jerk, he's thinking, right? I have a whole story, right? I'm ready to kill him because of my whole thing that's going on. And reality is, he's just spacing out. And that's what Chazal says. Don't listen to the voice in your head that made this whole story about what happened. Assume that that's just because you have your own stuff and he has his own stuff, and give him the benefit of the doubt, because we are humans and we have this inclination of not being correct and thinking we are correct and assuming the bad. Chazal tells us, don't.
You know why I like what you're saying now is because it references something that we've mentioned previously. The idea of how ego gets in the way of bitachon and getting in the way of her Hishtadlus as well. And thinking now, like, what you're describing from my perspective, from what I think you're describing is the idea of not being judgmental, to yourself and not being judgmental of life. And ego fuels judgmentalism. Means like at a moment of pure humility, you can see something that seems to be wrong, and you could understand that it's wrong, but you can also understand that there could be a bigger picture that you don't know about, and you can recognize that there's wrong, but you can also recognize it from a position of lack of judgmentalism. I don't want to get too focused on that whole world.
So the challenge is always that we're all kind of different. So you can't say one thing and it be universal, right? We all have a different stuff that we have to work through. So Chazal said something very broad, right? Look for the good and don't look for the bad. And that kind of works for everybody because we all get stuck there, right? I think Kelm also had that, right? That same idea. Find out what that predisposition is, that one midah, that whatever it is, and to break it, go to the extreme, right? So Chazal said, don't go to the negative, go to the extreme, the positive. Always assume that they're saying something good. And with that way, you'll balance it. But there's snow outside, right? They used to go outside and then roll in the snow. They used to walk into stores and ask for funny things because they were trying to break a midah that they had too far in one way. And this is what you always like to say, the balance. Like you can't live in the extremes. You have to live in the middle. And therefore you have to figure out what is your predisposition extreme one way or the other, and either make a rule for yourself that you're always going to know that you have that weakness and therefore you're going to compensate it by always viewing things positively or always doing something to counter that, or work through it with a therapist or whatever it is, but then this spills out into parnasa.
I wanted to go back there. So
yeah.
Talk to me. Where are you going with this back on the business side of things?
So in the business side, it works the same way. We were just talking before you showed up about how what we get comfortable with, our expectations, is where we end up living, right? Our comfort zone, and that explains why certain people take jobs that they can make more money down the road, but this one's more comfortable, right? I'd rather work at McDonald's for $3 than do that, right? Or another person might be, I rather not set myself up for something that my ego will have to feel the failure of it, right? So they'll do things to figure out around that, but we're all stuck in that world. And the way you move to the next level is you need awareness. So you need to figure out what is your predispositions to things. Where is your mind naturally always go? And then figure out how to break it. And I just came back from vacation, and there's these posts that are going around on LinkedIn that going on vacation gets you more business. But what I realized what it really probably is that going on vacation puts you in a different default state. I don't have time to answer your calls. I don't have time to jump through 100 hoops. I'm just going to send you over what I would send everybody. Like, there's a different default self, and sometimes that's a better default self for us. That, oh, you're not always available. Oh, you're too busy. Maybe you're very successful. There's a whole different approach that's now being manifested that might be good for you. And it's about understanding what your default self is and then challenging yourself in the areas that maybe you're very comfortable with.
I like that. I like that idea that when you go on vacation, because it changes your environment, it forces a complete mind shift. Yeah. You're able to then recognize, oh, wait, you mean normally I think in that way? Cool, I like that.
Right, because we keep putting in the fork into the outlet and getting electrocuted, and we don't know why. Right? Really? So sometimes you need to go to a different environment or stop holding the fork to realize it. So I think a lot of it is just being self-aware.
Wow.